Welcome back to the Top Notch Leader, a podcast where we empower leaders and transform teams. We break down strategies, mindsets, and tools that help leaders and organizations reach the next level. I'm Terrence Colson, and today we're diving into a topic that can completely change the way you track success in leadership and in business. We're going to talk about measures of performance versus measures of effectiveness, how to use them, and how to leverage them to get better. So your Mo is your Emerald City, and your MOPs are your Yellow Brick Road. No big deal. The question is, are you doing these correctly, or are you just going down a little rabbit hole for no reason? You ready? All right, today we're talking about MOPs and MOEs. What are MOPs and MOEs? Measures of performance and measures of effectiveness. Too many leaders focus on activity rather than impact. And a lot of times they don't do this intentionally. They're not focused on, hey, let's just do busy work for the sake of busy work. But they don't quite understand how they can take the actual tasks and the things that they're doing in their business and apply them towards and focus them on reaching the goals that they have set. And that's where MOPs and MOEs are going to be super helpful. Okay. Tracking these things, they can look good on paper when you talk about activity versus impact, but they don't actually move the needle. Understanding the difference between MOPs and MOEs can help you avoid this trap and ensure that your efforts are leading to real, measurable success. This isn't a complicated thing, but this is also something that if you don't understand how to use it, you could use it incorrectly, or you could think you're using MOPs and MOEs to your advantage and really you're not doing anything to help yourself or set yourself up for, or your team up for success. So we're going to dive into MOPs and MOEs. This can get super like high level stuff when you talk about how to develop MOPs, how to develop MOEs, how to tie the two together. But at the end of the day, a lot of people actually think because this is something you're going to learn at like a postgraduate level, when you talk about formal education, that it has to be complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can take this thing and break it down so that you can apply it at whatever level you're at. And if you're at a mid-level or a higher level management, then this is, if you're not already doing this, you need to get on this immediately. Okay. And again, this is a very simple topic, but you need to apply this at whatever level you're at. So if I'm a mid or I'm an upper level leadership, if I'm up in a C-level position, you need to look at how effective your MOPs and your MOEs are, and then using those to drive kind of where you're at as far as progress and impact towards reaching the larger goals. Okay. All right. So by the end of this episode, this is what we're going to walk away with. You're going to have a clear understanding of what MOPs and MOEs are. Okay. You're going to have real world examples of how tracking the wrong metrics can lead to failure. And then adversely, that's going to teach you how tracking the right metrics can lead to success. And then practical strategies to align your team's effort with meaningful outcomes. All right, so let's get into it. So the first thing we want to talk about is what are MOPs and MOEs? All right, let's break it down. MOPs are measures of performance, and MOEs, or MOEs, are measures of effectiveness. Measures of performance track whether a task or process is being executed correctly. Think sales script. Think opening and closing procedures for the business. Think any task that has to be done, and if it's not done to standard, then there's going to be issues down the line. Anything IT, anything coding, anything sales, lead generation, marketing, you have to do things usually in sequence or in a particular manner, or they're not going to get the job done. The MOP is measuring whether a task or process is being executed correctly. It's about efficiency. It's about completion, not leaving holes in processes. And it's about compliance. Are we meeting the standards, regulations, SOPs, whatever that looks like, guidelines for whatever task that we're accomplishing? MOPs, measures of performance. Measures of effectiveness assess whether actions that are being taken are actually achieving the desired result or outcome. They focus on impact, change, results. What are we doing to move the needle? You notice there's a stark difference between the two. A measure of performance is, are you following the checklist? A measure of effectiveness is, are we doing the things to achieve the desired outcome. Somebody tried to explain MOPs and MOEs to me, and again, it was real like high level conversation, and we were talking about different examples of how to align MOPs and MOEs at the strategic level. And somebody else kind of came into the conversation because I was almost struggling to grasp it holistically. And they said, look, MOPs, are we doing things right? And MOEs, are we doing the right things? So if you remember anything from this first part of this podcast, that's the easiest way to break it down. A MOP, are we doing things right? A MOE, are we doing the right things? Let that sink in. It's a very simple way to remember the two and how they are different. All right, so we can go on and on about what MOPs and MOEs are and how to define them different ways and different ways to use them. But I think the most effective way to get you guys the information without going on and on and on about it is to dive into some examples. So let's start off with some examples of military and business applications for MOPs and MOEs, just to create some context around what these are and align that context with the definitions. All right, so in my experience in the military, MOPs are everywhere. There's always some kind of box to check. There's always some kind of tracker. There's always some kind of SOP. There's always some kind of checklist. It's everywhere. We have all these checklists, and they're not very often aligned to the MOE, and the MOE is really what matters when it comes to being in a leadership position and defining whether or not we're being successful or not. Okay? A lot of leaders have MOPs. They establish systems, but those systems aren't aligned with a direction, and therefore the system just makes you look more organized. It doesn't really accomplish anything. The MOE is what anchors that system to a trajectory to enable you to move forward. All right. If we train soldiers, but they weren't ready for combat, what's the point? It's that kind of mentality. If I have you memorize a script for a sales call, and then that script doesn't do the things that we want it to do, then who cares if you memorize it and you execute it perfectly? It's not getting the desired effect. Now, MOPs are super important, so don't underestimate the requirement for those. But the key is that these things are interconnected. And if you're not interconnecting them correctly, then you're spinning your wheels. All right. The same thing applies for business. We talk about MOPs and MOEs in the military and getting ready for combat, but business is the same thing. You can complete projects on time, under budget, to standard, meeting all regulatory requirements. Cool, you hit all your MOPs. But what if they don't generate any value for customers? What if they don't increase your revenue? What if they don't increase value in the company? You're missing MOEs, right? Or your MOEs are misaligned. Therefore, you're missing the mark. If I am contracted to build a facility and I meet all the regulation and the code for that facility, but I build a warehouse when they need multifamily housing, what the hell am I doing? It's that kind of a thing. So those are some type of examples and just some context around MOPs and MOEs. So moving on, we want to talk about the dangers of tracking the wrong metrics. I've spent the last couple minutes, oh no, don't track the wrong metrics. But let's talk about why we don't want to track the wrong metrics. So many leaders default to the MOPs because they're easy to track. They look good on reports. They're easier to identify, and they can help you feel good about getting stuff done, right? Oh, we did this thing. We set up a checklist. We executed the checklist. I'll give you another example. Hey, we create packing lists for whenever we deploy somewhere. We go somewhere, you need to have this equipment. It has to be packed. We inspect it. We make sure all your stuff is packed accordingly, and then we move on. If that packing list is like stuff you would need to go to the beach or the jungle or the desert, and we're going to the mountains in Alaska, like, wrong MOEs, my guy. Just because you have a packing list doesn't mean shit. All right. So if you don't have MOEs and you don't have the right MOEs, then what you're doing is you're risking confusing activity or busyness with impact. So you don't want to do this, and you especially don't want to put your team in a situation where they confuse that, because then when the results come out, all they're going to do is get deflated by the fact that they didn't actually accomplish anything of value. They just were spinning their wheels for no reason. Okay? So here's an example of leadership development for MOPs and MOEs. A MOP might be 100% of managers are completing or have completed the leadership training. So let's say you have an onboarding program for leaders, and with that, there's a leadership training block. Your MOP, your measure of performance, is did all of our managers that we onboarded complete the training? That's easy. Again, MOPs are usually easier to identify. The MO, the measure of effectiveness for leadership development, would be something like employee engagement and retention improve due to better leadership. So again, are we doing things right? Are we completing the leadership training, and are the new leaders that are getting onboarded, are they completing the training to standard? But then the MO, the measure of effectiveness, is that training generating employee engagement and retention? Because the point of having better leaders is to build better teams and have better employees, right? Through development. So employee engagement and retention improve because the leadership training is effective. MOP, MO. Okay? Just because a leader sits through a training doesn't mean they're leading effectively. If employees are still disengaged, the training didn't achieve the goal. Therefore, you either didn't meet the MO or you didn't establish an appropriate MO, and you're not even going to be able to identify this and fix the MOP. Okay? Which fixing the MOP would be, not fixing the MOP. You'd be able to identify this and then fix the thing that's generating the MOP. Okay. So in this case, the leadership training. Okay. So example 2, let's talk about sales performance, right? Sales is the key to everything. One of the things that I think the military messes up is they treat recruiting like it's recruiting, but really it's sales. And if we taught recruiters how to sell, I think we would have better results. Being able to sell is everything. Sales is everything, because if you can't close and do the things that are involved in selling, then you have zero value. Okay. So we talk about sales a lot in here, but that's the anchor point for why I bring up sales a lot. All right. So let's talk about sales performance. A MOP, a measure of performance, might be each sales rep makes 50 calls per day. What's the MO assigned to that? The MO would be sales conversion rates increase, leading to higher revenue. All right. So we can kind of dive into this one a little bit. So the MOP, the measure of performance, is did you call 50 people? Great. The measure of effectiveness is did sales conversion rates increase, leading to higher revenue? By doing more reps, you should be getting better at something. Also, you notice it says sales conversion rates increase. The MO is not number of sales increases. So they've aligned a MO that actually helps the company get better for the long term. They didn't just say, hey, we need to surge on revenue. Do more work and you will establish more funds in the bank account. What they did for this MOP and MO, what we've done is we've said, hey, we need you to make more calls a day, but the goal of making more calls is not just to make more calls the way you're doing them now. It's to get more reps in so that you can get better at sales, so that you can increase your conversion rate and the company can get higher revenue. And then I think one of the best ways to structure compensation for sales teams is based off of like compensation for production. So you close more rates or you close more calls, you make more money also, and you're bringing in more money for the company. Okay. So again, the MOP is good. The measure of performance is, are you hitting the mark that you're supposed to be hitting? 50 calls a day. Yes. Right? You might have another MOP that's assigned to this MO that we're not talking about now that might be, are you following the script? Or you might have a project on the side where you evaluate the effectiveness of the script and you have a team that's assigned, are we making the script better to help our salespeople increase conversion rates? So all this stuff all comes together. We talked last week about setting goals, setting appropriate goals, specific things like that. You've got KPIs. We talked about those. Look at that episode last week. MOPs and MOs are kind of in line with those KPIs and aligning them to goals. All right, so let's go into a third example. Employee productivity. Let's use that as a topic. So the MOP, the measure of performance, team members log 40 plus hours per week. So if I'm hiring somebody full-time, now there's different mindsets based off of the industry or who you work for or whatnot. Some people will say, hey, we don't want you working more than 40 hours. Some people will be like, hey, work all the overtime you want, just get the job done. But again, we're looking at employee productivity. And so one, our MOP might be team members log 40 plus hours per week. So they're working for 40 hours a week. They're a full-time employee. That, in my personal opinion, there should be no issue working 45, 50 hours a week. Now, if you're working 70, 80, I hope you really want to do that job, because otherwise you're just wasting your time lining somebody else's pockets. Find a new job or work on being more productive. Okay. But anyways, the MOP, team members log 40 hours per week. The MO, the measure of effectiveness for this: projects are completed ahead of schedule with high quality outcomes. So you notice here again, we're not making people work for the sake of more time spent doing the projects so that on a calendar they're done early. It's that projects are completed ahead of schedule with high quality outcomes. If I spend 40 hours a week at work, I'm then going to be able to go through and focus on the projects that I need to accomplish. Then, as I get more reps doing these projects, I'm going to be able to be more efficient while maintaining my effectiveness. Therefore, I can start completing projects ahead of schedule, which then means what? I have high quality outcomes. I'm meeting the measure of effectiveness because I'm completing projects ahead of schedule. Now, I can take on more projects in the same amount of hours, which means I can be more productive. And we're trying to look at employee productivity. You see how the MO sometimes doesn't always feel super connected, but it needs to be in that realm where it's not team members log 40 hours per week. And then your measure of effectiveness is, are we paying overtime to at least 80% of our employees? Like, that's just another MOP, really, but it's kind of an arbitrary one because it says the same thing as your original MOP, but it's less directed at the people who are actioning things, okay? So your measure of effectiveness: are we doing things ahead of schedule, completing them ahead of schedule, and do we have high quality outcomes? All right. And the key here, again, is not to confuse the MOP with the MO. So the time spent working doesn't always equal effectiveness. Employees are working long hours but still missing deadlines, then your metric is off. So maybe you do this, and this is one, we talked about communicating your goals. This includes your MOPs and MOs. If you're communicating your MOPs and MOs to your team, they're going to understand where the benchmark is, and they're going to be able to score points. If you move the goalpost, then it makes it frustrating and impossible for people to be successful. So again, you might go through this and you might realize that just looking at hours per week is not a good MOP. And so you need to adjust your MOP in order to meet your MO, okay? Or properly assess your MO. All right. So we've had a couple of examples, different areas for developing some MOPs and MOs. You can see these are not super complicated. You just need to look at where you want to go, and then you want to look at the MOs to articulate that. And then from there, develop your MOPs. So how do we ensure that MOPs support meaningful MOs? Well, there's a 3-step framework to apply in any leadership or business context. This is universal. Use it. Okay? Step 1, define success. Do the MO first. Do the MO first. Do the MO first. Okay? Identify what success actually looks like. Don't focus on tasks. Ask questions like, what is the real goal? What changes do we want to see? How will we know if we're achieving those changes or those goals? Ask those types of questions. Think of the more like, I want to move in this direction. That's how you get a MO. Like, what do I really want to get after? And that's going to help you establish your measures of effectiveness, okay? For example, leadership development. The goal isn't just complete the training like we talked about earlier, but it's to see measurable improvement in leadership behaviors, which is going to drive employee retention and engagement. So that's step 1. Define success, do the MO first. Step 2, identify supporting actions. Supporting actions. So you notice the MOPs support the MOs. The MOs do not support the MOPs. If you create MOPs and then you create MOs to support the MOPs, you're going to have this cool spreadsheet with your MOPs and your MOs, and you can create a crosswalk and you can show the boss how you're getting after stuff, and you're this visionary leader. You're just going to be moving on a treadmill and you're going to be accomplishing nothing. And then pretty soon, somebody's going to realize you're kind of full of shit and you need to get your shit together. So do not be that person. do your MOEs first, then identify supporting actions, which are your MOPs. Once you define success, you can map out the key actions that lead to that outcome. Okay? This ensures that your MOPs actually support the MOEs. So your MO is your Emerald City, and your MOPs are your yellow brick road. No big deal. So if you want better leadership, the MOP isn't just training completed, it's whether leaders apply those skills in real situations. Okay? If you want higher revenue, the MOP isn't just calls made, it's whether those calls are turning into deals, right? So your MOP, like we talked about earlier, okay, there's some holes in these. Your MOP could be, did you finish the training, right? But you could create a stronger MOP for your leadership one. If you're looking for employee retention and engagement as a MO, your MOP could be, are leaders utilizing and applying the skills they learned in the training in real situations? And then you could create a survey, or you could create a way to track those metrics, and then you can see if that's a thing. Okay. Same thing with calls made. We talked about earlier, the MOP can be very specific, right? And you can turn the MOP into like a SMART goal, so you can get more in depth than just like make 50 calls a day. But at the end of the day, it's not, did I make more calls? It's, did those calls turn into deals? So making sure your MOPs support your MOEs. If that yellow brick road turns left and Emerald City's on the right, like, you're wasting time, energy, and resources. Okay. So step 1, define success, which is your MOEs. Step 2, identify supporting actions. Those are your MOPs. Step 3, supervise and refine. Track progress and adjust when needed. Okay? So track your progress, adjust when and if you need to adjust. A lot of organizations, they set MOPs, they set MOEs, or they set things that are MOPs and MOEs, but they call them something different, or they have other buzzwords, bumper stickers they use, but they don't course correct when the numbers don't align. If your MOPs aren't driving your MOEs, you need to pivot. Okay? If your MOPs aren't moving the vehicle towards the goal, then you need to change your MOPs out. If you start heading a direction and you realize, nope, this MOP is driving us towards this MO, but I think we are not moving in the direction that we thought we wanted to move, then you need to adjust your MOEs. And it's okay to adjust your MOEs too. Either way, if you don't refine and make adjustments, you're just going to blindly go out into space and hopefully hit the moon, right? But you might just totally miss the moon. You might just slip into orbit and go nowhere, right? Okay. So if sales calls aren't turning into revenue, maybe you need to change the script. That's something we talked about earlier. Okay. If leadership training isn't improving engagement, the training format is ineffective. So you have to set good MOPs to get to your good MOEs. Okay. It's all about continuous evaluation and realignment. And here's the deal. For the leadership training thing, you might see a leadership training, right? And everything's working and your MOP is developing your MO and you're going and you start to hit a plateau. Well, maybe the quality of your team is higher. And so again, you need to adjust your MOP so that you can get to your MO, but now your MO requires something different in order to get to it. So that's when you adjust your MOP. Maybe you adjust the training to step up to the next level, and then you can continue seeing that progress. Okay? Sales calls, same thing. You might implement a MOP, you might change the script, do a thing, and it works. And then that thing works up to a ceiling, and then it kind of hangs out there. If you're not making progress, and if the MO is to increase the number of deals that calls are generating, if that plateaus, then you need to adjust your MOP so that you can regain momentum for your MO. All right, so step 4. How does this apply to you and your team? All right, we're going to bring it home with some practical takeaways for leaders at different levels. So let's say you're a frontline manager. Look beyond task completion and ask whether your team's work is actually driving results. I used to work at Foot Locker when I was like 17. Worked at Foot Locker. We had to restock the back. We had to upsell socks and shoelaces and cleaning stuff, things of that nature. And then had to sell shoes, do customer service, returns, restock the front. Normal stuff, okay? Things you would think a teenager would be expected to do, full t-shirts at Foot Locker. One thing that my manager did that was correct as far as making sure the team's work actually drove results was she established a standard for upsells. Okay, so when I started working there, it was like, hey, when you're here, try to sell socks, try to upsell laces, try to upsell whatever products that we have that are shoe adjacent. She said, hey, we're like number 23 out of 50 or whatever the number was for upsells. So we're going to start training each other, or we're going to start training on upselling, how to do it without sounding like cringy or like over salesy or pushy or sleazy about it, but make it more natural. And so we did the training. So she established a MOP, whether she realized it or not. She established the MO, which was increase upsells. And then she established a MOP, which was conduct training on upselling in order to increase whatever. So we did the training. Then she gave us an incentive for being the number one upseller in the company. It was like, I forget what it was, but it was something that I cared about at the time, right? Again, this was like 20 years ago, so forgive me. But, yeah, so if you were the top upseller, you got this incentive, okay? I think it was like for the next 2 weeks, you got to pick which shift you were on or something. Either way, she understood that she had to set a standard, right? A measure of performance, which was how much are you upselling and are you completing the training on upselling shoe adjacent products from Foot Locker. She had a MO, which was increase revenue for the company, increase our status among the rest of the stores within the region, and increase our upsell numbers, right? So she got it. That's a perfect example of like a frontline manager doing something, setting MOPs and MOs. Now let's talk about you move up, right? You're a senior leader. You have to ensure that your organization's KPIs balance both the MOPs and the MOs, right? So you have KPIs. We talked about those in the episode on goals and KPIs. Make sure you listen to that if you don't know what that is. But ensure your organization's KPIs balance both MOPs and MOs. So if I'm setting a KPI, it's got to feed the MOP, the script, the number of hours I work, the number of projects I complete, the whatever it is, the measure of performance, with the MO. Where are we going? Where are we heading? What is the end state? What are we trying to drive? Okay? And then you do not want to just track what's easy to measure. You want to track what truly matters. Don't track what's easy to measure. Track what truly matters. Back to the sales calls. I can track, I'll give you another example. When I was doing recruiting, we had to, there's math, and you can calculate your conversion rates, which if you work in a sales team, hopefully you already know this. But if you're looking to get involved in sales, or you're trying to figure out how to refine how to do things as a small business, you need to calculate your conversion rates. So how many calls or how many leads turn to calls, how many calls lead to follow-ups or appointments, how many appointments lead to appointment completions, because just because I make the appointment doesn't mean the person's going to show up or answer the phone when I call, right? So appointment completions, and then appointment completions to closing, right? For us, it was test, and then it was physical, and then it was enlistment. I can track my conversion rate, okay? And then I can quantify, I have to make 250 phone calls a week. I have to send 150 emails. I have to send 800 texts, and I have to talk to 15 people face to face. If I do those things every single week, the math says I will put in however many people I need to put into the Army, right? Or I will recruit X amount of people, or I will complete X amount of sales, or whatever those things look like. You take your conversion rate and you do the thing. That's a MOP. That's great. There's two pieces to that. If you're only tracking that type of data as a senior leader, you are not doing what you need to do to make the company better. Because I should be able to take that same amount of conversion data and I should be able to watch it slowly decrease as I get better at my skill craft, so that more leads turn into calls, more calls turn into appointments, so on and so forth, all the way down the funnel. You need to look at the MOPs and establish MOPs in a way that they actually track what matters. What is your conversion rate, right? If you actually look at your conversion rate and your conversion data, you could say, hey, I want a 5% increase in performance of conversion data month over month. All right. Well, it's not a lot if you're just starting, but as you continue, it might get a little more difficult to get a 5% increase in efficiency and effectiveness of your actual sales calls. So don't just track. We run the conversion data. We make sure they hit all their marks for their conversion data. Okay, what are you doing to make them better so that we make more fucking money? That is the question, okay? Senior leaders, track what matters. Make your team better through MOEs. Establish MOPs to support your MOEs. You are going to crush it. If you're a business owner, this is what you need to be thinking about, okay? If your team's busy, but the bottom line isn't getting any better, you have to reassess your MOEs and you have to make sure your strategy aligns. Okay. You have to make sure. It's very easy as a small business owner, or even as like at a bigger level, when you're the CEO, when you're looking at the overall picture. I see this in my current position. It's like, we're going to do this thing, and then we do it and the needle doesn't move. You got to pivot. You have to pay attention to that. And really what you're doing is, it's like tuning an engine. You are making adjustments to the tune and you're looking for the needle to change on right? Like, are we getting more torque? Are we getting more horsepower? What are we, right? Are we getting more horsepower to the wheels? What are we looking for and what are we establishing? Are we getting more pounds of boost? XYZ. Whatever your metrics are. But you want to see the needle change. If you're not seeing the needle move, you got to go back to your MOPs and your MOEs. You got to make sure your MOEs are aligned and they're correct. Then adjust your MOPs accordingly. If your MOEs are already good, just go to your MOPs. But don't skip the assessment part, okay? So, So if you're a frontline manager, make sure the team's work is actually driving results. If you're a senior leader, track what truly matters. Don't just capture the easy stuff that makes you look good in the meetings. And then if you're a business owner, make sure your MOEs and your MOPs support your MOEs and your MOEs align with your overall strategy so that you can move the needle. Okay? Here's a simple question you can ask yourself regularly. Are we measuring what's easy, or are we measuring what's meaningful? Are we measuring what's easy, or are we measuring what's meaningful? If you ask yourself that question, you should be able to center your chi, answer that question for yourself at whatever level you're leading at, and either keep doing what you're doing if it's working, or measure things differently. Okay? Last, I got a challenge for you. Okay? Whatever level leadership you're at, if you're up here at your mid-level leadership, your upper level leadership, you're a CEO, you're an owner, you need to look at your current metrics. What are you measuring? Identify a MOP that you already track regularly. I promise you have a MOP. You probably just don't realize that it's a MOP right now, and that's okay. Look at a current metric and look at your current metrics that you're using. Identify one MOP that you track regularly. Ask yourself, does this MOP actually drive a meaningful MO? And if it doesn't, if you can't tie it to a Mo, rethink how you're measuring success and adjust your focus. So when you're assessing this, when you do it the first time, when you go through things, you can do it from the top down. Or if you're just kind of curious, you can walk the dog back up the hill. So you, instead of saying, okay, what are my Mo's? Are they effective? Are they getting after the alignment of my goals for the company or for my department or whatever that looks like? And then look at my MOPs. Okay, do my MOPs support the Mo's? My MOPs do or do not support the Mo's. Okay, make adjustments as necessary. We're on track. Now I can track my progress. You can also say, what am I measuring? Okay, then tie the MOP. Oh, there's a good Mo. Boom. That's the one that it actually ties to in real life. Don't just make shit up. And then now assess the Mo. Is the Mo in line with the company goals? Yes or no. If it's no, adjust. If it's yes, handle your business. All right? If you want to take this one step further, share your thoughts, comment, send a DM, send us an email. All right, so the last thing to do is tie this down to our bold factor. This ties directly into your blueprint, your vision. All right? You have your SMART goals and your KPIs from last week's episode. You have your SMART goals and your KPIs from last week's episode, where you're organizing your tasks and you're making sure they understand what's going on. Your MOPs and your MOEs is your blueprint. This is what we're tracking, and we're tracking it because it ties into where we want to go as a company, where we want to go as a department, where we want to go as an organization, where we want to go as a small business. Okay? You have to establish MOPs and MOEs, and then I would establish a crosswalk. These are our MOPs. These are our MOEs. These are kind of how we want to see progress over time, to establish a clear blueprint for your team so they can get after the things that you want them to get after, so that your team and your company, your department can be successful. All right. So that's it for today's episode. If you found it helpful, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a review. Make sure you share it with a leader who needs this in their life. If the dude over there sucks or the chick over there is trash, make sure they listen to this episode so they can get their team online and they can not hold you back. All right? If you're serious about becoming a top-notch leader, you want to get more involved, look us up on LinkedIn, The Top Notch Leader. We will be there. All right? Until next time, lead boldly, develop wisely, and always measure what matters.